Hey everyone, my name is Sara Harberson. I'm America's college counselor. It's good to be back here for another Facebook Live. We are streaming live both for Sara Harberson, the Facebook page, and also Admissions Revolution. And all of these Facebook Lives are saved for anyone to take a look at, but it's a chance for families, students, parents, even college counselors to ask questions about the admissions process. This is a really busy time of the year. There are a lot of 9th, 10th, and 11th graders, even 8th graders, picking classes for next year. I've gotten so many questions about course selection, especially in our younger application nation group. So I know that you will probably have some questions about picking the right classes for next year. But we also are hearing from our seniors who are getting results back for early decision 2 programs. I know that New York University released their early decision 2 results at around 4 o'clock this afternoon. So there might be some questions about deferrals, regular decision, May 1st deadlines. So make sure you ask your questions, and I'm going to try to answer as many as I can tonight. And it looks like we already have some. First question, do selective small liberal arts colleges like your alma mater, Hamilton, prefer students to apply undecided rather than into a specific major? Well, thank you, Tanya, and I'm glad you know that I went to Hamilton. So what I would say is that generally speaking, if a student is looking at highly selective colleges, whether it's a big research university like a Duke or Penn or Vanderbilt or Tulane, or a small liberal arts college like Hamilton, those highly selective colleges, they are looking for the strongest applicants, and the acceptance rate is going to be really, really low. So what I would say is that students who have a specific major and they list it on their college application and they have the evidence to back it up, and I'll mention how you can show evidence in a moment, that's going to strengthen an application. Now, granted, admissions officers know that students are going to change or a lot of them will change their minds about their major choice once they get there. And at a place like Hamilton, it's an open curriculum and you have a lot of choices. But as an applicant, whether you're looking at highly selective small liberal arts colleges or highly selective big universities, putting down a major, you're not committed to it, having the evidence to back it up is really going to strengthen your application. Some ways that students can provide evidence in their application for a major choice. Think about and look at your transcript. Look at the classes that you've done your best in, the classes that you're taking the most advanced level classes. Those oftentimes will lead you to a major choice. Look at your extracurricular activities. Are there any activities that support that major? So let's say that you're interested in majoring in business. Typical common activities would be doing DECA or FBLA at your high school. So the other way that you can show evidence for a major would be, is actually going to be, well, the teachers that you ask for letters of recommendation. That's another way that you can provide evidence. So let's say you want to be a biology major, you ask your AP biology teacher to write one of your letters. So providing evidence can really strengthen that major choice in the application. Next question. Good evening, Sara. My daughter's school limits students to 3 AP classes per year. When following your 5-4 plan, what are the must-have APs for junior and senior year? I love this question. Okay, so some of the high schools out there are going to put limits where they say that the student can only take, let's say, 3 AP classes junior year or 4 AP classes senior year. So I'm thinking about junior year. If you only have 3 AP classes, I would say AP language. That's the very traditional AP English class that a lot of juniors would take. I would say that is my number one choice. I would say either AP US History if the student is leaning towards the humanities, or an AP Science class. And then depending on the math sequence, so some students will have pre-calculus as a junior. Sometimes Some students in junior year will take calculus, so I would say see if your high school has the new AP pre-calculus class. But if you are ready for calculus junior year, I would try to take AP Calculus AB and possibly AP Calculus BC senior year. Senior year, I would say AP Calculus AB or AP Calculus BC, really important. AP Literature would be my second choice. And then your third choice, I would go towards what your strengths are. So if you're going to be a science major, I do an AP Science. If you're going to be a humanities or a history major, I would do one of the AP History or Social Studies or Social Science classes like AP Gov, AP European History, AP Micro and Macroeconomics. Another great option though would be AP Spanish or AP French or whatever foreign language you take. But if you have limitations, I would say try to maximize the APs, especially in math, English, and one other subject. And if that one other subject can be related to your major choice, even better. Okay, next question. Supreme Court is likely to end the use of race in college admissions affirmative action this May or June. How would this decision impact admissions? Yeah, this is what everyone in college admissions is talking about. So I think most people in the field are anticipating that the U.S. Supreme Court will rule that affirmative action is unconstitutional. So that would probably happen in June. I don't think that's something that a lot of us want to see happen, but we're already kind of planning and predicting what will be impacted and how this will affect students applying, especially the students in the class of 2024. So what to expect? I don't think you're going to see the check boxes for race to be eliminated from Common App or other applications. The reason being is that colleges still have to track their demographics. And so even if they are not allowing their admissions officers to see those race check boxes, the college will use it to be able to track underrepresented students because they want to be able to see and evaluate how affirmative action helped or hurt the diversity, especially the racial diversity of the student body. So I don't see those check boxes being eliminated from the application, but admissions officers would not be permitted to see them. So especially if the college uses the Common App, it's very easy for that to be blocked from the admissions officers. You have to remember, we're in this test optional landscape, and if a student applies test optional without test scores to a college that has a test optional policy, the testing section is blocked from the admissions officer. So it's very easy to do that. That being said, to me, a student's background, a student's race, their ethnicity, their family situation, these are so important to who the student is. So if I'm working with students and they are very proud of their backgrounds, whether it has to do with race, culture, ethnicity, or something else, I really encourage them to consider writing about that topic for their main essay or possibly some supplemental essays. I also think, and I was mentioning this Monday night, I was doing a Zoom call for my Application Nation class of 2024 group, and it was all about building the college list. And we talked very briefly about how I thought affirmative action would be ruled unconstitutional. But I said, I really do believe that especially the more selective colleges are going to pay even more attention to a student's socioeconomic background and educational background. So the colleges that have more generous financial aid packages, oftentimes that also correlates with a very low acceptance rate. My guess is that they're going to continue and actually increase the value of students coming from lower income backgrounds, students who are the first member of their family to go to college. So I think that that's going to matter even more in the admissions process, especially for the more selective colleges. Next question, can you have a teacher from sophomore year write a letter of recommendation? Yes, you can. And I would say traditionally, Colleges have always said for a very long time that students could pretty much ask sophomore and junior year teachers. But I will just add that there are a handful of highly selective, like really, really, really elite colleges, like Yale, for example, that they're now saying that they want to see letters of recommendation come from junior and senior year teachers. I'm going to be honest. I have never recommended a student ask a senior year teacher to write a letter of recommendation. And the reason for that is most of my students are applying early decision or early action or both. Those deadlines are October 15th to November 15th. If you are relying on a senior year teacher to write a letter of recommendation, they really don't have a lot of time to get to know you. So I'm not a big fan of senior year teachers. So I then say, ask junior year teachers if you can, and if not, yes, sophomore year teachers are okay. I would just say that if 2 letters of recommendation are required for most of the colleges that you're applying to, and one of your teachers is a sophomore year teacher, I would really try to make sure that that second teacher is from junior year. And again, I've said this a million times, but just in case you're new to me, you should be asking teachers who taught you in those core academic subjects. So English, math, science, history, and foreign language teachers are the teachers you should be asking for letters of recommendation. If a student lives in one country but goes to school in a different, if a student lives in one county but goes to school in a different county for admissions purposes, which county will the student fall under, school or home? So grateful for you. Absolutely, Lori. Okay, so here's the thing. And this is it's a great question because I usually don't get a question like this. So for most admissions offices, they are arranged by region, and there are admissions officers assigned to each region in the country and even the world. Generally speaking, the admissions officer is assigned to specific states in the US. So for example, when I worked at Penn, I was working with students, my first year I was working with students in northern New Jersey. Well, northern New Jersey actually sent a lot of applications, so it was actually split up. So the state of New Jersey, there was an admissions officer who handled South Jersey, an admissions officer who handled Central Jersey, and I was the one, and at least initially when I started there, who covered northern New Jersey, and that was done by county. But it's based on where your high school is located. That is the county that is associated with your application. That being said, if you, let's say, go to boarding school in Massachusetts, but you live in Montana, your application will be evaluated in the context of the Massachusetts applicant pool. But your address in Montana is really going to matter because it's usually an underrepresented state for most colleges. So in terms of counties, focus on where the high school is located. And if you're going down to the county actually, or focused on that, you're usually coming from a state that is sending a lot of applications to that college. So just keep that in mind. Hi, Michelle. My daughter is following your 5-4 plan, great, with multiple AP classes. And if you're wondering, what is everybody talking about, this 5-4 plan? It's a term that I use to ensure that students are taking all 5 core classes for all 4 years. I've got an old blog about it, and I talk about it a lot. So that's what they're referring to. She's thinking about majoring in hospitality management. Very cool. She plans to take a professional certification in culinary arts in her high school. Since the program is not honors level, how much will it hurt her chances to get into a highly selective school? Is she better off to take other honors and AP classes? Okay, this is a great question. So hospitality management, that's working in hotels, restaurants, the hospitality industry. And there are a couple of highly selective colleges that have a hospitality management or something similar, that type of a program. And so if some highly selective colleges are on your list, you always want to prioritize your core academic classes, those 5 core academic classes, and making sure that you're taking them for all 4 years ideally. Those come first. If the student has room in their schedule, and there is this special culinary arts certificate that the student can do, which is super cool, I'm all for it. You know, even though those core classes are what really matter, the elective classes or that certificate program that the student is interested in, that's gonna inspire them. That's gonna tell them that they're following the right path. And any admissions officer looking at that student's transcript would see the classes that would be needed to get that certificate. So it can only help, especially if she is set on that particular major. The only thing you wanna keep in mind, and this is a big one, is you're right. If you are going to a high school that uses a weighted GPA, and they have a weighted class rank, either way, the student who is taking more advanced level classes is going to have a higher weighted GPA and a higher weighted class rank. And so that could absolutely impact your daughter's standing in the class. So my first question would be, does her high school use a weighted class rank? And if not, do they use a weighted GPA? And then check your daughter's high school profile. It is a document that should be put out by the college counseling office or guidance department. You usually can find it on the high school's website. Look at the profile and look to see if they have any other forms of ranking on that profile. A common one is if the school doesn't use class rank, a lot of times they will use GPA ranges and the percentile or decile ranking of the students in the class. And so easily an admissions officer can take the GPA that's listed on the transcript and match it up within those ranges and have a sense of where the student falls. And if other students in our class are taking more APs and more honors classes, that could absolutely impact her rank and her GPA. The last thing that I will say is that colleges are usually using the class rank or the GPA from the end of junior year. So if she's able to take those certificate classes for senior year and she has room in her schedule, I'd probably recommend that. Okay, next question. Hi, my child was deferred from her early decision school. She sent the letter of continued interest, so we call it the LOCI. Can she send an email to the local admissions rep with an update? Is there something else she can do? The school wasn't clear. So I usually am pretty strict with updates and letters, and I would say, if it's a really, really, really important update, something absolutely substantial, very significant, like a state or national award, I would recommend, if an update is permitted this late in the game, I would say to do it through the admissions portal if they offer that. I would not email the admissions officer or admissions representative at this point. You will find that they get annoyed, number one. They don't have time to go through their email on a regular basis, and a lot of them will never reply to the student over email in this period of time. And so that leaves the student guessing and wondering if they actually got the update. So I would do the update through the portal if it's absolutely necessary. And good luck. Next question. If you do not submit the SAT or ACT score, would it impact the selection? And the GPA is good, around a 4.7 and top 10 student in the school. It's really hard to know a weighted GPA unless I'm looking at the student's transcript and profile, but it sounds like the student is really at the top of the class. So if they don't report SAT or ACT scores, what are their chances? And I talked about this Monday night as well. What we're finding in Application Nation is, and the thing is, we track all of our acceptances. So when a student gets accepted to a college, no matter when it happens in the process, they or their parents will fill out a form and they will indicate whether or not they reported their test scores, and if they reported their scores, what they were. And so we can get a feel for, trends in student reporting of test scores or not reporting. What I am seeing is that if you're applying to highly selective colleges, and you don't report test scores, it is very difficult to get admitted. So let's back up a little bit. Highly selective colleges are going to be those colleges that have an overall acceptance rate of 25% or less. And I would say if you're looking at colleges that have a single digit acceptance rate, like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9%, getting into those schools is extremely difficult. And I would say getting into those schools without test scores, no matter how good everything else is pretty difficult. So if you are a strong student and you want to apply to some highly selective colleges, I would probably focus on those colleges that have an overall acceptance rate that's in the teens or the low 20% range. Hi, Sarah. If you are 100% sure you're going to a certain school, shouldn't you withdraw your other applications so someone else can have a spot? What is the right etiquette? Oh, I love Carolyn for asking this question. So if you are absolutely sure, no doubts at all, you know you're going to go to that school, there are no financial aid issues or merit scholarship issues, sure, absolutely. You can let all the other colleges that admitted you can let them know that you are turning down that offer of admission. You don't have to feel bad about it. You can usually do it right on the admissions portal or send a simple email to them. And yes, it can open up some spots. I would say it's probably not going to open up some spots for students in the regular decision applicant pool, but it probably will help those students that are going to be waitlisted, because right now colleges are really finalizing those regular decision results. And so, hearing back from a handful of students right now may not affect those students at that particular point, but I think for those students who end up getting waitlisted, it can definitely help, because the college has a better sense when students let them know that they're not going to be accepting that offer. They have a better sense of how many more offers they can give out. So proper etiquette, yes, as soon as you absolutely know, absolutely go for it. But I think for a lot of students, it takes some time. And if there are some more colleges that they're waiting to hear back from and they really want to compare things, they can absolutely wait. But as soon as they know, yes, you can notify all those other colleges that you're planning to enroll somewhere else. Hi, Sarah. We are a new Application Nation 2025 family. Wonderful. And my son is pursuing the IB diploma. Very impressive. How many of his core classes should be higher level in junior year? Unfortunately, his school does not offer IB Chinese higher level for non-native speakers, so language will have to be SL or standard level. Yeah, well, first of all, Lisa, thank you so much for being a part of the group, and I hope you're getting a lot out of it. You could literally spend days and weeks with all the resources that we have in the group. But in terms of his junior year curriculum, with the IB program, you really can't go wrong. You're always going to meet my 5-4 plan because it's such a broad education. But you're asking about how many of the IB classes should be HL, higher level, or standard level SL. What I would say is to ask the IB coordinator at your high school or your child's school counselor, because usually the high school will have a really set limit. And I usually see that students are taking higher level classes in either 3 IB classes or 4 IB classes. That's pretty standard. And in terms of not being able to take IB Chinese higher level, as long as that's clear on the school profile, the admissions officers would not expect to see the student taking it on the higher level. So I like a school profile where the whole curriculum is very clear. They list the AP classes, if AP classes are offered. If it's an IB program, they list all the IB classes, which ones are offered at the HL level, which ones are offered at the standard level, and also if there are specific requirements, like they have to take 3 or 4 HL classes every year, junior and senior year, I should say. So I would turn to your IB coordinator, the school counselor, and also check that school profile. And if you need help with that, we can definitely help in the group, okay? Next question. My son goes to Shipley. Awesome. I love Shipley. I worked right across the street at the Baldwin School, or really just around the corner. So I know Shipley well. And I used to cover Shipley. When I worked at Penn, I used to cover all the Montgomery County high schools. So it's good to see you here. They do not have class ranking. That's true. They have honors classes, but no AP classes. That's true as well. Baldwin was the same. They don't send GPAs to colleges. That happens a lot with the very savvy private high schools, and I wish more public high schools would actually do that. They're telling us that almost all colleges will calculate the GPA on their own. They do send a profile of Shipley students along with each transcript. This is much different than our daughter's school. Can this negatively impact your son? Not at all. Okay, so here's the thing. Colleges are going to work with whatever the high school provides. So they want a clear transcript. They want a high school profile. They are only expecting to see what is available to the students in terms of curriculum. And there are a decent number of private schools across the country that do not calculate a GPA. There are a ton of mostly private schools that don't offer APs as well, and students are not disadvantaged at all. Students are only expected to take advantage of what's available to them. But you're right, and I'm glad that Shipley is telling families there are a lot of colleges, not every college, but a lot of colleges that even if the high school put the GPA, the cumulative GPA on the transcript, there are a lot of colleges that will do their own calculation. So for example, when I worked at Penn, we only focused on those core academic classes. So that's why I came up with the 5-4 plan. Elective classes are great, but it's those 5 core classes, or sometimes students take more than 5 core classes, that are gonna matter, especially at those highly selected colleges. So the colleges will recalculate the GPA based on what's important to them. So if you're applying to the University of California system, for example, they will see 9th grade, but when they're doing the UC GPA calculation, it's actually just 10th and 11th grade. And the courses have to fulfill one of the A through G requirement classes. So if you want more information, obviously, if you're in Application Nation, we have our own UC expert that helps us out with all the details. But every college is going to do the calculation differently. So don't worry so much, because they're not going to share it. Every college could do it differently. Some colleges won't. But for a high school that doesn't calculate a GPA, they will probably do that for the student, for every student that applies from that particular high school. Nothing to worry about at all. And I would say it's not about where you go to high school anymore. It's about what you do while you're there. And you can apply that to every chapter of your life. It doesn't matter where you go to college. It's what you do while you're there. So just keep that in mind and be confident you're at a great school with great college counseling too. All right, next question. My daughter is taking 5 APs in junior year. Wow, that's a lot. Does it matter if she takes 4 APs in her senior year? I think if she's applying to highly selected colleges, most admissions officers catch everything, so they will notice that. But if she's exhausted the curriculum in a subject matter and there are no AP classes left and the school profile makes that clear, I don't see it as a big deal. But I often will say, generally speaking, and there are exceptions to this, I generally say that when you're picking your senior year classes, you want to try to keep the rigor at least equal to the rigor from junior year, and sometimes a little bit more, especially if, let's say, the student only took 1 or 2 AP classes junior year and they handle it well. By senior year, I want to see that they increase the number of AP classes, or at least did the same number as they did in junior year. Does it look bad if you don't submit AP test scores? No, it doesn't look bad, because they're not required for admission unless you apply to Georgetown. And I would say MIT says they're not required, but they want to see those scores. But almost every other college in the country, they are optional. So it's so much more important to take the AP class and do well in the class. There are going to be some high schools in the country, though, that require the student to take the AP exam if they take the AP class. But if that's not a requirement and you don't feel confident going into that AP exam, it's okay not to take it. It's okay to take it and not report the scores. I am very clear with my Application Nation families. I like to know what AP scores they got, what their major is, what schools they're applying to, and then I give them specific advice about which scores should be reported at which colleges, because I know I worked at a college where if a student got a 4 on the AP exam, that could be enough of a reason for that student to be denied. So I'm really careful and really thoughtful about giving families advice about those AP scores. In the end, unless it's Georgetown or MIT, they're not required for admission. So only report the scores that are going to strengthen your application. Hi, Sarah. How did your current senior students do with test optional applications so far this year compared to those that applied test optional the last 2 years? Great question. So test optional really started full-fledged. It would have been the class of 2021, then last year's class, the class of 2022, and then the current seniors of the class of 2023. I would say there were some exceptions, but for the class of 2021, if you applied test optional and everything else was strong, you still had a really good shot of admission at the colleges on your list. For the class of 2022, I saw that if you didn't submit your scores, I started to see it was getting a whole lot tougher than the prior year. And I would say already for the class of 2023, I'm seeing it that it's even tougher. I'm thinking back, and I'm sure we have more, but just off the top of my head, for those colleges that have those single-digit acceptance rates, I'm thinking of Yale, for example. I can think of one of our students that got admitted in their single choice early action. Is it I think it's single choice early action instead of restrictive early action. I can think of one of our students that got admitted in that early action round without test scores. And I'm sure that there are more colleges and more of our students, but that's the one that stands out to me. And I feel like we should have more of them. So I think it's pretty clear if you're looking at those highly selected colleges, they still want to see those scores and they still want to see really high scores. And if you look at the data that the colleges are providing to the public, they might share what percentage of their applicant pool applied without test scores, but that doesn't really help us. Sometimes they will even tell us like what percentage of the class, reported scores versus didn't that got admitted. But I want to see acceptance rates. Personally, I want to see if a college is test optional. I'm all about transparency. You got nothing to hide, put it out there. I want to know the acceptance rate for students who apply with scores and the acceptance rate for students who apply without scores. If you are truly a test optional institution, you won't be afraid to publish that information. So another thing that I need that data. All right, one more question. I have high school junior triplets. Oh my word, that's amazing. 2 of them have similar extracurricular activities. How does applying, great question. How does applying to the same college as a twin or triplet affect admission chances for both? So for years, I've been saying this advice. So if you have twins, triplets, multiples, multiple kids applying the same year from the same family, couple of things. Number 1, even if both of them or all 3 of them want to go to the same college ultimately, and that's a little less common these days, but let's say they all want to end up at the same college, I still want them to have different college lists. Here's why. It's hard for one kid from the family to get admitted these days. It's going to be even harder for 2 or 3 from the same family. So it's important to diversify your college list even a little bit. That's number 1. Number 2, admissions officers are in charge of those regions. Remember, it could be a county in your state, could be your whole state. And so the same admissions officer is going to be responsible for, 2 out of the 3 kids from the family that are applying, or maybe all 3 kids. And so they don't want to see 3 or 2 applications from the same family that are really similar. So I want students to diversify their extracurriculars a little bit. I want their soundbite, even if they're a twin or a triplet, I want their soundbite to be completely their own. And if you're curious about soundbite, please buy my book or join Application Nation. I'm going to be doing a soundbite Zoom call with AN, with our Application Nation 2024 group on March 1st. And I want their essays to be different too. I can remember reading applications from twins. I can remember even reading applications from triplets when I worked on the college side of this process. The biggest mistake that those students made was that they all were presenting so similarly. And admissions officers really want to see 3 distinct students, even if it's 3 students from the same family, okay? On that note, great turnout. Wasn't expecting that one. Awesome. I was saying to my husband, I don't know, it's mid-February, but look at you all. I'm so glad that you all came out. I love doing these Facebook Lives, and I wasn't able to do my Instagram Live on Friday because of a lot of things going on. Wonderful things, but a lot of things going on in our family. But so I'm really glad that I was able to do tonight's Facebook Live, and I'll be back here again. I try to do them every single month. I hope you've enjoyed this. You've gotten a lot out of it. A lot of free resources on my website, saraharberson.com. I do a weekly blog almost every single week. My new blog will be coming out tomorrow. And just to give you a little teaser, it is about the ChatGPT application or platform or that students are curious about. So I'm going to be talking about that in my blog and how it is going to be impacting college admissions. So on that note, it was great, a great night, and I hope you all have a good rest of your week. Take care. Bye-bye.